Okay, that takes care of the first ethical issue that I wanted to talk about. Obviously, what I'm arguing is that from an ethical standpoint, understanding the concept of flourishing leads us to the conclusion that the captivity of cetaceans in entertainment facilities, captive facilities, is ethically indefensible. But as I said right at the outset, there's another mammal involved here, humans. And humans, strictly from the standpoint of looking at these operations as a business. That is, what are the consequences for investors and employees when management gets the flourishing question wrong? Now, as I said right at the beginning, one of my complaints with this situation is that you have a business that must take seriously the development of scientific research, and in this case, it's that granted when orcas and dolphins were taken into captivity initially, we really knew relatively little about who they were, what they needed. Over time, we have learned a great deal. We have learned so much that it now really calls into question whether that whole industry can be defended from an ethical standpoint. What the management of these companies should have been worrying about all the time is, are we providing these cetaceans with the conditions necessary for flourishing? Now, if they get that answer wrong, then I'm going to suggest that has a significant impact on the business. For example, this is a graph of the stock price for SeaWorld. It went public in early 2013, and while it's had its ups and downs, it's currently trading at a little more than half of the original value. It originally was offered at about $32 a share. It's now down to something in the order of 17 and 18. And those big drops follow bad news, reports of bad news. So certainly one thing that happens when management gets the flourishing question wrong is shareholders lose money. Also, here are some headlines I've seen in the last couple of years. U.S. government hits SeaWorld with safety violation again. Blackstone to reduce stake in SeaWorld. Now, Blackstone is the private equity company that had bought SeaWorld, took it public, and has since then been reducing its stake in the company. If a private equity company thinks that a company is going to be quite profitable, especially in the short term, it won't be selling off. It'll be holding its stake. Southwest Airlines ended its relationship with promoting SeaWorld. The stock fell dramatically when the orca controversy, when it was clear that the documentary Blackfish was hurting attendance. Other investors who held significant positions in the company sold off. There are now a series of shareholder suits that came on the heels of the Occupational Safety and Health Administration's finding against the company. Shareholder suits that now claimed that the IPO, the initial public offering, did not disclose fully all the risks that investors were taking by investing in this company when indeed, according to OSHA, the conditions under which employees were working were unsafe. The stock analysts slashed ratings at various times, again going down. Virgin America became another airline that dropped SeaWorld in promoting their business and with a partnership. And more recently, the long-term CEO, Jim Atchison, stepped down, and the company announced that as a way of dealing with its financial trouble, that there were going to be some layoffs of employees. So what happens when management gets the flourishing question wrong? Bad news, because there are a variety of ways in which the company certainly is not making money and is talked about more as a source of controversy than anything else. Okay, what's a major reason, though, that a company might get that question wrong? Major corporations are run by smart people. There's no percentage in having people who are incompetent at the top of an organization. boards of directors, senior management, these are very difficult jobs to get. And particularly when you look at a well-run company, you see a lot of very impressive talent at the top. In this organization with SeaWorld, you would want to have people at the top who really are managing the whole flourishing question. So why would it happen that you have a major company like this get such a fundamental question wrong? My opinion is that it's because management and the board lack the appropriate skill set to manage this kind of a company, this kind of a problem. That is one that requires very intense and very sophisticated and professional understanding of both the scientific and the ethical issues. Let me show you what I mean. So here are the key executives for the company. Currently, after the retirement of the resignation of the last CEO, the chairman of the board is now the interim CEO, David D'Alessandro. His background is in financial services. The chief financial officer, background in operations management and finance. The chief parks operations officer is listed as having a bachelor's degree of arts. The chief creative officer, degree in arts and an MBA. The chief human resources officer, background in HR. General counsel, background in political science, speech communication, and of course a law degree. The chief accounting officer, background in accounting, and the chief zoological officer, listed as having a bachelor's degree of science. Okay, not science heavy in there, mostly finance people. Let's look at the board. Board of directors. David D'Alessandro is the chair. We already looked at him. The former CEO of SeaWorld, his bachelor's degree was in marketing and as an MBA. Representative from Blackstone. Okay, he has an undergraduate degree, but Blackstone is the private equity firm, so he's basically a numbers person then. Another one, William Gray, also from Blackstone. Judith McHale, who is the CEO of Kane Investments and also with a background in law. Again, someone from the world of finance. Thomas Maloney, a former CFO, mainly in financial services. Alan Tauscher, impressive background in foreign affairs and investment banking. Deborah Thomas, Chief Financial Officer of Hasbro. And Peter Wallace, another person from Blackstone. Now, what you'll notice is that when you look at the senior management of the company, when you look at the board of directors who oversee the senior management and are ultimately responsible for the company, what is missing is professional level scientific competence. You also do not see technical sophistication there to understand the ethical implications of the scientific findings. These are basically numbers people. These are people in background in financial services, accounting, marketing, not science. There's not much science represented there. Now, it's true that in the SeaWorld organization there are people with professional expertise in the sciences, but these are not the people who set the strategy of the company. So what I'm arguing is that one of the reasons that the company can get the flourishing question wrong is because the individuals who are charged with final strategy and oversight of the company, while they are very competent in many other ways, they do not personally have the expertise that they should have in the scientific literature and the scientific research and the ethical implications of that for this kind of a situation. And that has led to the failure to have an appropriate strategy for the issue that involves new discoveries in science and ethics and allows the company to thrive from a business standpoint, to thrive financially. Now, the other side of this coin is that what the current management is doing that it should not be doing. What is not needed is the bunker mentality that has adopted, in which they characterize all critics as radicals. This is not a company that promotes open and free discourse and embraces the controversy. And as I said at the outset in my introduction, I believe that I speculate, it's just a matter of speculation, that the main reason that the company asked that the ACS panel not be recorded was because without video recording of what Naomi Rose and I was saying, it's easier to characterize critics as radicals. But that kind of a bunker mentality does not win the company any respect, and it certainly does not make for a progressive and effective corporate strategy. Now, similarly, this of course is what drove this presentation from the outset, attempts to limit discussion, particularly when the technology is so friendly to universal dissemination of things. Any attempt to limit discussion, such as asking that the presentations not be videoed, a serious mistake, because what it suggests is that the company has this defensive mentality and is not really recognizing the problems for what it is. All it's doing is reacting to situations and digging in deeper. Digging more deeply into a strategy that we're seeing from a financial standpoint isn't working. It also will not work in the future, because another issue that I'm not going to go into here but is certainly critical to the future of the company is the way in which the attitudes of the current generation of 20-year-olds are such that this generation is very strong on environmental issues, no matter what their political allegiance. And people of that sort in the next 5 or 10 years, I have many students who tell me that they will not be taking their children to places like SeaWorld. So it's critical that that corporate strategy be set in a far-reaching way to ensure profitability for investors and guaranteeing the jobs of employees. Now, you may say, well, isn't this unrealistic? Isn't it unrealistic to say that a board of directors and a management should have a scientific background as well as a financial background? Shouldn't it be enough that these people are really good with numbers and really good in marketing and understanding the way a business operates? And that isn't what somebody might say that what I'm arguing is unrealistic and doesn't exist. So let me tell you a story, because what I'm arguing for is that a company like SeaWorld needs a different model of corporate governance. Before I did this talk, I had a conversation with an individual who was the president of a segment of a company that does a lot of work in technology and engineering. And so I said, humor me, think of this situation. Think that your company is now one whose primary business is connected with airplanes, particularly, say, braking systems or other parts of the airline that cause it to land and stop safely. And imagine that your logo is something like this graphic that I have, something that portrays an airplane landing where people are going to be having fun and the beach and sand, and that's the brand. And I said, okay, now imagine that you hear that at a reputable scientific conference there is a discussion about part of your business or part of the technologies that suggest that there are significant flaws. And there are significant flaws that suggest that your technology may ultimately be causing harm. I said, what would you do? He said, well, first thing I'd do is talk to our people and to our engineers and ask them what their attitude was. And he said, and if they said, that's fine, we've looked at this, we're good, I'd let it go. I said, okay. Now, imagine a couple of years later, it comes back again. Major scientific congress, more people saying the same thing. Other conferences going on, as this continues. Again, the way your business is operating can potentially do harm, is doing harm. What would you do? He said, well, at that point, we'd probably go outside. We'd bring in people who are experts in this and ask for their opinion. I said, okay, but first of all, is there anyone on your management team, aside from your in-house engineers, is there anyone on your management team, anyone on your board who might be able to take a look at this and even initially say, yeah, this is a legitimate scientific and technological issue, or this is just rogue science and we can ignore it? He said, oh yeah, not only are there members of the senior team who have that ability, the chairman of our board is an engineer. And my point is that you can find companies that have built their business this way, and that's critical, because when you're selling something that depends upon understanding scientific and technological progress, to minimize the risk in the company, to make sure that the business is operating best of all, you need that expertise all the way through. You just can't say, oh, we're trusting on the word of the people down in the, sort of down below, because after all, they're employees. There are limits to what they can say, or even if unconsciously, if they're afraid of giving you bad news. So my point is that for companies like SeaWorld, other facilities like this, they need to be run in an equivalent way. You have to have that kind of scientific and technological capacity, and more importantly, the ability to understand the ethical implications of that at the top of the organization. So to wrap things up, what I'm arguing is that when we talk about cetaceans, the concept of flourishing is central in answering the question, is it ethically acceptable or not to keep dolphins and orcas in captivity? When we talk about the humans involved, the company's practices must be consistent with the best science and the ethical implications of this research. We also have to recognize that when we talk about the ethical issues connected with captivity, as important as the cetaceans are, humans get to be counted too. And we see that the shareholders in particular have already taken a big hit on this. The employees are going to be laid off. That's a significant issue. And that's just not some kind of business issue. When you lose your job, that's a really serious harm. So it speaks to the kind of responsibility the company has over the long term to promote the interests of every stakeholder who's involved. And that's done by having scientific and ethical expertise at the senior level of the company. That then is what gives us the capacity to develop an appropriate and successful long-term strategy that can weather this kind of a situation. Because really what the company needs to do now is to take a courageous and dramatic turn, recognizing the implications of the scientific research, but realizing that there are ways to make money. Ways to make money that indeed would make SeaWorld a kind of environmental hero, but one that then recognizes the difficulties of the problem, finds ways out, and also then wins the allegiance of many people who now would ask people to stay away from the company. Those individuals would be very, very much on the bandwagon of saying, that everyone should go to SeaWorld and support their efforts. So thank you very much. As I said, this is a brief discussion of these kinds of issues. There's certainly plenty of reading that you could do, but as I said, given the initial initial action that led to this, which was that I was faced with a situation of a company suggesting that discussion should be limited on this kind of issue, I felt that I really wanted to make it possible for people to see that the kind of discussion that we should be having is one that is not driven by antipathy towards SeaWorld. It is not driven by environmental extremism. It's a conversation that is driven by serious professional concerns in science and ethics, and I leave it to you to make up your judgment on all of this. Thank you.